This case is one of Korea's darkest cases involving a very famous athlete. Just like celebrities, athletes can have their own fan base and clubs. They're tall, they're charismatic and wealthy, and it seems like they would have the perfect life. And in today's case, this K athlete's crimes are still a mystery because he literally took his sins to the grave. So no one knows why he did the things that he did, why he had to wipe out his girlfriend's entire family. I'd love for you guys to dive in this case with me to figure out the motive and the mindset of Lee Ho-sung, South Korea's once praised baseball star. This is Lee Ho-sung was born in 1967, and I couldn't find much about his childhood, but I'm guessing as he grew up as one of the top athletes in Korea, he probably spent most of his childhood just playing baseball games. I feel like athletes have the same schedules like K-pop trainees because all they do is practice. Like athletes have one of the most grueling childhoods and training programs or practice times, and it has to be that way, I believe, because it's also a profession where you retire early. You know, the human body ages from 25, so a lot of these athletes start from very young age, and you know, when they're still young, they retire. A lot of athletes quit school as well. But Lee was literally able to juggle everything. He even went to Unsolved University. Unsolved is one of the top universities in Seoul, South Korea. He was also over 180 centimeters in height, and especially back in like the 80s and 90s. I mean, if you're at least 180 and over, there's a thing in Korean, like that means you're considered tall. 180 is what, like 5'11", 6 foot? Also a good physique that made him a great baseball player. For 2 straight years from 1991, he even won the KBO Golden Glove Award. He also represented the Haetai Tigers, or Haetai Tigers in Korean, and the team won Korean baseball series 4 times in the 90s. He battled .272 and 102 home runs in his career. So any baseball fans, you know what I'm talking about, because I don't. But I'm guessing that that was pretty good. Like the team was very well known, and he also rose to fame. He eventually also became the team captain from 1999 to 2000 and became the president of the League Players Union in 2001. He officially retired at the age of 34 in 2001, and he truly became an all-star. Now, once he became a captain and a team leader, there were some rumors that he had a very hot-headed temper. It was rumored that he also didn't really have great relationship with his fellow juniors because he would be very, very strict with them. Also, a lot of rumors that he would be very bad to his juniors, using violence many of the times. And especially back then in any career field, there was a very bad senior and junior kind of hierarchy. But it just goes you to show the insight of what kind of negative personality Lee might have had behind closed doors. After his retirement at only in his early 30s, he decided to get into creating his own business. And a lot of athletes actually, once they retire, they're still very young. They have their whole life to live and they don't know what to do. And a lot of them just have a lot of money laying around in their bank account. So they start doing a lot of investments and creating their own business. Lee started his own wedding ceremony company, and the wedding business did really well. He even opened up 3 different locations. It was called Ho-sung Weddings, named after him. He had about 70 employees and was making around $6 million annually. His fellow athletes and celebrities would have their wedding at his business, and you know, he made a lot of money. Lee was also married and he had 1 son. Just keep that in mind, because it's about to get a little ugly. Their identities, relationships, and again, a lot of personal things about Lee is very, very little known, and I couldn't find much. Now, the story really starts in 2007 when Lee went to a tuna restaurant and he fell in love with the owner, and she was named Miss Kim, who was 46 years old. Things have escalated really quickly. He became more of a frequent customer, and eventually Miss Kim introduced Lee to her staff members in the tuna restaurant, saying that this was a person that she was going to get married to. Now, to remind you, Miss Kim was actually married as well, and she had 3 daughters of her own. One daughter 18, 17, and 11. So they were pretty grown up as well. But both of them seems to be in a serious relationship while still being married, although Miss Kim said that she had a very difficult relationship with her current husband and they were not in a good place. The restaurant staff remembers that despite Lee's very sharp features, I mean, let's not lie here, he pretty much looks intimidating kind of. But despite his looks, he was very good to females and was a typical masculine guy as described by the staff members. Lee eventually became very close to Kim's daughters. So close that they would even call him dad sometimes, which I thought was a little weird because they had their own father and they were still married. I guess they were kind of separated, living separately because he would frequently visit their apartment as well. It just goes to show you that they were willing to call this guy Appa, their own dad. That's how close and like they saw such a good personality or good side of him. Like you don't just call anybody dad. Fast forward to February 18th, 2008, Miss Kim all of a sudden told her staff members, especially her tuna restaurant manager, that she was going to go on a vacation for a couple days. The manager said that, you know, she's never been to a vacation, but thought, okay, like have fun. She was only supposed to be gone for a couple days, but days went by. She never came back to a restaurant, and her own brother started to get really worried. Her brother started to call her every single day, and it was the 15th day, almost 2 weeks since she was supposed to go on a vacation, and still no contact from her. So Kim's brother called the police and they went to do a welfare checkup. When they went there, it was very small, but they did find some blood spots, especially on the bed. They had no other clues, but they did have a CCTV in their apartment, and looking into the tapes, the day that she told the staff that she was going to go on a vacation, around 9 p.m. they saw a man with a hat, with a mini wagon. He would go up to the apartment, then 6 minutes later came down with a large black bag. He would do this 4 times in the span of 30 minutes. And unfortunately, this footage was pretty dark and grainy and you can't make out someone's face. So police did some digging, and the only person that they could not get into contact with and was the most suspicious was Miss Kim's boyfriend, Lee Ho-sung. And it was proven that starting from the 18th, Lee went into a hideout asking his close friends, which was mostly female close friends, to help him get a phone, to get him a bank account under someone's name, to, get a motel with them to stay at. On March 9th, police finally decided to ask the public for help and put out a public warrant to find Lee. Only 1 day after Lee's warrant, his body was found and it was presumed that he self-harmed himself. And surprisingly, that night as well, near a graveyard in Jeonnam Province, police found the 4 bags containing Kim's entire family. The cause of death was suffocation from neck compression with both hands, and they determined that this was actually like one of the most typical ways that you would imagine someone would kill someone, like in the movies. So the doctors actually said Lee had to be looking into the victim's eyes when he was doing this, which meant that he had to have immense hatred towards these victims. It was also proven that the eldest daughter was not in the apartment. She was called separately by Lee later on through the night, and he has done this somewhere outside, they don't know where. So sick, he knew what he was going to do. He knew that he has already done this to her entire family, called her separately while she was outside with her friends, and ended her life. And even more shockingly, the graveyard that they were found in was near Lee's father's grave. They were actually able to find these bags because a mid-aged man who was watching the news called the police and said, "Wait, I feel like I've seen that man." So it seems like Lee hired 2 workers to dig a hole near his father's grave in order to put up a memorial sign in honor of his father, which of course was an excuse. Lee asked them to dig over 2 meters or over 6-foot hole. There were a lot of rocks, it was a lot of work, but they were being paid, so they did what he told them to do. And now we know that hole and what it was used for and why it needed to be so large. Police determined that the main suspect was Lee, but unfortunately, he died. So what happened? How did he go from an all-star athlete to a serial killer? So when police dug into Lee's life, so much dirt started to surface. And just to let you guys know, because the suspect died, these are just like theories and as much plausible conclusion that we could go into. So did Lee and Kim have a fight? Did he all of a sudden do this because maybe, I don't know, they were fighting about money? Or did Miss Kim figure out that he was cheating on her? So 3 days before her death, Miss Kim was seen going to 5 different banks pulling out a large sum of money, and we're talking about over 100 grand, like 140 grand-ish. I guess back then, even in the 2000s, you were able to pull out a lot of money. These days you can't do that. Police were actually able to track down about 90 to 100k of that money, and it was actually used mostly by Lee. But they can't figure out where the rest of the money went. Searching even deeper, on the surface, Lee seemed to be very successful, but deep inside, he was in a bad financial situation. Remember, he made a lot of money in the wedding business. Now, once he made a lot of money, he decided to get into the screen horse racing business, and he invested about $9 million to this. Now, this is technically a form of gambling. I'm sure you guys saw Squid Games. When the main character is betting on the horse racing, that's pretty much what it is. And back then, there was a heavy protest going on regarding these because it was technically gambling. And in Korea, gambling is highly illegal minus certain. There's certain ones that you can play, but it's, you know, highly regulated and things like that. So because of the protests and the backlash, this business had to be shut down and he lost all of that money. Not only that, but he was being sued by investors claiming that he was a scammer. On top of that, he had a huge amount of debt. We're talking about like over $20 million here due to another bad investment in real estate. He was no longer allowed to borrow money from the bank due to horrible credit. Now, it's presumed that because he was in such great millions of dollars debt, I'm guessing that he probably told his girlfriend that, hey, give me the money that you have, we'll invest it into something and I'll double it or triple it in a couple years or whatever. Of course, being the girlfriend, you know, being blinded by your lover, it's so easy to give into those stuff. The very next day after the 19th, around 2 p.m., Lee is seen going to a supermarket parking lot to meet female A, who's 47 years old, and giving her around $40,000 in cash and asked her to put it into his brother's account. And then a little while later, they found out that he met a second woman. Her name is C. She was 40 years old, and she was actually another girlfriend of Lee, whom he spent his last 38 hours with her. He gave her around, again, $40,000, told her to keep $10,000 of it and give the rest to someone else that he knew. So he was dividing up all of this money and telling someone to hold on to it. So investigators quickly figured out that Lee was dating multiple people, and this is just the people that we know and that was revealed. But here is the missing hole here. According to criminal psychologists, I mean, he was in millions of dollars of debt. He was used to having millions of dollars and dealing with huge, large sum of money. So to kill someone, kill 4 people over a little over 100 grand compared to what he was used to dealing with, it just did not make sense. It is such a small amount of money or problem compared to where he was. There's proof that he purchased the carry-on cart and the bags in advance. And in my personal opinion, I did not hear anybody talk about this in other channels or in other blogs, but I personally think he really had no romantic feelings for Miss Kim, or really had much feelings for her daughters as well. He was kind of semi-acting all of this in my personal opinion. It seems like he had a sense of entitlement against other people that seemed weaker than him, possibly being an undiagnosed narcissist based on what we see here. He was dating multiple people, cheating on his wife, cheating on Miss Kim, cheating on C, cheating on who knows like who else he was dating at the same time. So it seems like he was using these people from the get-go. And remember, he was using Miss Kim's money to give it away and tell people to hold on to. If this was someone that you really loved, a romantic partner, how could you really use money like that and give it away to other people? It's not even your own money. And what makes me believe that he was actually planning this the day that he met Miss Kim is he was 40 years old and she was 46. Sometimes women are older and men are younger, which is fine, spot, especially in the 2000s. She also had 3 kids. A man dating a woman with 3 kids is honestly a very difficult thing, especially in South Korea when trying to marry someone or date someone that already has kids is kind of frowned upon. He was dating other women, so what made him go for this woman unless she had such charismatic, unless he was like romantically infatuated by her? I'm saying I think he saw it from the get-go that he wanted to use people. And on top of that, he buried them near his father's grave, you guys. That does not explain someone with empathy. It just goes to show you how disconnected he was from people, I believe, from generally anyone that he came across. And that links back to the rumors that he did not have great relationship with his baseball juniors and that he used a lot of his anger and temper to try and control people. Now, the last 31 hours before Lee died, he was with his girlfriend C. It was said that actually they were spending their time at a motel, and while they were watching TV, obviously the news about Kim, the missing family, and Lee possibly being the suspect was huge on the news. So C, watching the news, said, "Oh my god, wait, isn't that you?" And according to her, Lee refused and turned off this TV, saying that no, like, I don't know what you're talking about. But I think that's when he realized that there was nowhere to run. And right after this, that's when he died. It's still a mystery why he divided these money and what was he gonna do with them, because police don't believe that Lee planning to sell himself from the beginning. By Lee, this was like 20 days later. So what was his motive for taking her money? For what? That's the mystery here as well. According to C, she also doesn't understand why Lee did this, because she claims that even though Lee was in big finance trouble, he was not like uptight on his ass about money. Like, she explained that he had plans to pay back the money, which is usually usual for people who have dealt with a lot of money. They have like another investment plan, another thing that they're about to do. But in my personal opinion, you know, we can't really trust everything what C says, because a lot of psychopaths, you know, they show different characters to different people and have like 10 million different excuses that they told to all different people. So what he told C might not be exactly what he really was thinking in his mind. And when C questioned about the whole thing, did he really do this to Kim's family? Lee said, "I had to intervene. I had no choice," which is an interesting choice of word, intervene. So does that mean that more people were involved? Was he involved in something so dark that he really had to do it because it was ordered by someone else? Or was it something that he said to distance himself from his own sins and his own crimes, which is usually what a lot of criminals do. They want to kind of act as if they did not create this whole thing, that they were just involved and had to intervene in something that was already there. But forensic testings were done in Miss Kim's car and no other fingerprints were found, including no other suspicious phone calls by either party, so they didn't really find anyone that could have been involved in this, except Miss Lee himself only. Another hole is, how did Lee do this to 4 people, like honestly 3 grown bodies here? He was seen going in and out around 9 p.m., which is very early. I mean, do people really sleep at 8, 9 p.m.? Now, I'm guessing that he told Miss Kim that they were gonna go on a vacation very, very early, so to sleep early, and that's why we found bloodstains on the bed. Although Lee was, you know, athletic and big, I mean, you're talking about overpowering 3 people, not one person called the police or anybody. And Lee had to do this one by one. So how was he able to do this, overpower 3 people? It's a mystery as well. And it seems as if he had to have done this before, practiced this before, in order for this to go so smoothly as it did. There's another theory that maybe because C spent the last hours with Lee, that Lee did confess to C of his motives and why he did the things he did, but C is not telling anybody or the police, because if you do, it could possibly backfire on her, because she already knew what happened and did not report it to the police. So she might be charged. So being charged with concealing evidence, it might not look good for you. So maybe she does know why he did the things he did. So there's a second CCTV footage where 2 days after Kim went missing, so on the 20th of February, a man is seen in the parking lot parking Kim's car and then leaving. But crazy, professionals believe that these are 2 different men in the first and the second footage. Body language experts suggested this because usually people have different type of walking style as well. Kind of like everyone has different type of penmanship or handwriting. The way your arms and legs flow, like it's all different for people. And these two people walk very differently. Although this part has never been cracked or proven that it's two different people, police believe that if it was a second person, Kim likely hired someone to just park the car, or it's saying that more people are possibly involved in this. But the theory that more people are involved is not as plausible to the police because they believe that if Lee was not the sole suspect or the main suspect, he would not have himself, that most likely he would have turned himself over and told his story, saying that someone told him to kill people for money. I mean, whatever it is, he would have turned himself over most likely. This is when things get even more crazier. So remember, Miss Kim was married already. It was said that around the time Miss Kim passed away, I'm not sure if it's before or after, I can't find that information, but Miss Kim's husband also died, supposedly from severe depression. But a lot of people are trying to put together dots like, was Lee involved in Mr. Kim's death as well? This was never cracked. And in 2005, a man who was one of Lee's investment partners also mysteriously disappeared and was declared missing. Her husband was supposed to go meet Lee the day he went missing. Police first thought that he probably ran away because he also was in a lot of debt, and due to money issues, people go crazy and do crazy things. After the story went viral with Lee, did he have something to do with this man back in 2005 as well? Lee left a goodbye note to his own brother, and in the note it said, "I'm sorry to my mother, brother, my wife, and my son. Please take care of my son." He also left a note to his baseball league saying, "I miss the old times. I'll wait in heaven." And this note was heavily criticized because after taking away someone else's daughters, telling someone to please take care of my own son, people did not like that. That's all he wrote. Nothing stating why, what his problems were, why he did the things he did, what he was thinking. Nothing. He took his secrets to his grave. So we will never know what his motives were, and professionals say that there's always a motive when it comes to serial killers or murders. In my personal opinion, humans can be very good at keeping secrets, but usually people crack. Usually people just cannot hold it in, and they tell very close people of their darkest secrets. And I personally believe that someone might know something out there, but of course they don't want to get involved and get in trouble. So I think money, his ego, and his want to control and his sense of entitlement, narcissism just kind of blew up and ate him up, and he just went crazy. He also had no plans of marrying this woman, let's face it. I don't think he could love the children and do that to them. 3 daughters, you guys. In the end, police had to come to a conclusion and close the case as they believe that Lee was the sole suspect. But my gut does tell me that it's possible that this was not the first time that he could have done this to people. So what do you guys think really happened? I mean, the mystery really here is, why did he do this to Miss Kim and her entire family? I mean, what did she do that he just had to silence the entire family? The only explanation in my head is that his, again, psychopath craziness, his anger and his frustration with the situation that he was in just poured into other people, and he just went cuckoo. He just went crazy. I mean, sometimes you just don't have explanation for things, and that's why it's crazy. What was inside the mind of once this all-star athlete to a serial killer? Thank you so much for watching, and remember to check out Harry's, and see you in my next video. The most talked about case in South Korea right now is being called the roundhouse kick attempted murder. And just recently, his identity in South Korea has been released by the victim and her supporters, not legally through the police, which is becoming more and more common as criminals' identities are protected in South Korea unless they're approved by the police. Which is why there's a huge outrage right now, people calling out saying that criminals' identity should not be protected under the defamation laws. And talking about how we can protect ourselves, especially as a female walking late at night. And unfortunately, in South Korea, because you're not allowed to have any weapons technically. So I want to discuss with you guys, well, then how else is it possible to protect ourselves? So the case technically happened a year back, but it has been blowing up in the media recently because the victim is questioning the missing 7 to 8 minutes. And if we can figure out what happened in those missing 7 to 8 minutes, the suspect could be put behind bars for a longer period of time than just 12 years, which that's what he has been sentenced currently. There has been a lot of 묻지마 cases in Korea. 묻지마 technically means don't speak cases. So these are cases where the victim and the suspects are not related at all, and it's just a random attack on an innocent victim. A lot of people are also confused about the defamation laws in South Korea, which we will touch base in this podcast episode. So today's case actually happened back in 2022 at Busan City. Busan is south of South Korea. It is almost the second biggest city next to Seoul. Busan is basically like the Miami of South Korea. There's beaches, so people are known to be more chill. It's where you go eat a lot of seafood, and because it's near the water, it's like a semi-expensive place to live. So you see what kind of a safe town Busan is supposed to be. So again, on May 22nd, 2022, a woman named Miss Song, she was 26 years old at the time. She was having a great night out with her girlfriends. She says that she loved watching busking or like street performances, which Korea has a lot of them. It was also a Saturday night when she went out, so she decided to stay till really early the next morning, and it was around 4:35 when she decided to head back home to her apartment. She was pretty tired from all night out. I mean, it was almost 5 a.m. and there's a CCTV footage of her walking back to her apartment alone. And for about 7 minutes approximately, a man is seen following Miss Hung, and it seemed like he was keeping a safe distance so that she doesn't notice that he was right behind her. And when she stops to look at her phone, he would stop and kind of disappear into the cars. So it is an obvious sign that someone was trying to stalk or follow her. And as she enters her luxury apartment building at 5:01 a.m. and presses the elevator to go up, that's when the same man creeps behind her and does a roundabout kick and knocks her down. Now this video has gone viral because it is so unusual for someone to do a roundabout kick like karate or taekwondo style, but he continues to physically assault her about 5 more times, specifically hitting her head on purpose until she passes out. And he's seen carrying her, like lifting her up with one arm and taking her into the corner hallway where there was no CCTV. And this is a corner where people get their mails and where the emergency stairs were. But just before he went to that corner, he's seen picking up her stuff that fell as well. I mean, while holding, I'm guessing she's over 120 pounds. And from there, approximately 7 to 8 minutes go by. No one knows what was happening in that moment. And right after, he's seen leaving the area. And this is something that I personally noticed that I haven't seen anyone talk about, but in the CCTV footages, it looks like to me he's like zipping his pants kind of. What do you guys think? And at 5:21 a.m., a neighbor enters and sees the woman passed out and calls the police. Later on at the hospital, Miss Hung had to get multiple stitches on her head, and she was reportedly very swollen, multiple bruises on her face specifically, and she was required to be on medication for at least 2 months to recover. It shook Korea when it happened because this was not a normal guy. This was a strong physique man where the force of his kick was not normal. This was a strong kick. Pick someone up with one arm, and who knows what happened in those missing 7-8 minutes. Miss Hung unfortunately also had damages in her nerves, so it caused her to lose sensation on her right legs, and doctors said that she might not be able to ever walk again, but thankfully with physical therapy and good luck, she was able to gain that back. But she says that dealing with the mental trauma was so difficult that till this day and for God knows how long, she has to be on medications. Now thankfully the man was quickly arrested, I believe about 3 days later, and because Korea has a lot of CCTVs and it's easy to actually find someone in South Korea. And it turned out to be a man named Lee. He was 30 years old at the time. Supposedly, after this incident, he went back to his girlfriend's house. He told his girlfriend that the police are going to be looking for him because he had a history of criminal records, which we will get to. And he convinced his girlfriend that they have to leave the house, and they checked into a motel where they stayed for a couple of days. The girlfriend did help Lee to escape for a couple of days, and the police did find that out, and she was actually charged later on for helping escape Lee. But the girlfriend, I believe, ended up helping the police out later on. They were supposed to meet at a secret location, and she did bring the police there. That's when Lee was arrested. Just to let you guys know, if you do help a criminal run, you will be charged as well and can get prison time. Now, who is this guy, Lee, who literally did a roundabout kick to knock someone out? Now, it turns out at the moment he was unemployed, but he had a history of working as a club bouncer. So that kind of tells you what kind of physique he has. He had some meat in his body and he was very strong. But he had a history of from petty to extreme crimes since he was a young kid. From 2006, when he was a child, to almost his entire adulthood, he has been in and out of prison. Most was for theft and assaults and fights that he got into. So almost all his entire life, he has been in and out for a couple months in prison. And I believe recently, before this case, he was put into prison for about 6 years. He got out, he went back to prison for about 2 more years, and it was only within 3 months since he's been released from prison in 2022 when this case happened.
그래서 어떤 남자인가 모르겠는데 그 사람을 제가 너무 마주칩니다. 뭐라 몰라 하길래 그냥 저한테 그런 줄 알고 솔직히 좀 갑자기 그냥 화가 나더라고. 술을 먹고 일어나 사람이 이상한 게 됐는지도 모르겠는데 그러다가 피해자 눈이 마주쳤는데 저는 뭐 통화를 하는 게 저한테 뭐라 하는 걸로 들었어요. 그만큼 화가 났어요. 정확하게 어떤 말을 들었는지 기억이 안 나는데 그러니까 그때 술도 마시고 일어나 기억나요? 일본 가야 좀 걸어왔어요. 일본 진짜 일본 가서 기억이 진짜 기억이 나네.
Now, when Lee was interrogated by the police, he gave multiple versions of his story, but the most ridiculous thing that he's still sticking with is the fact that he was drunk. Now, in South Korea, there's a law called 심신미약, which is when you're technically unconscious, meaning when you're acting out of unconsciousness, meaning like when you're really drunk. Technically, your sentence can be lowered because according to the law, when you're not consciously aware of what you're doing, that can be like an excuse to your behaviors, which there's a lot of controversy with this law. So anyway, he claims that he was drunk and the victim gave him a dirty look and said something to him while he was passing by, and he got angry and decided to follow this person. Now, he claims that he didn't even know this person was male or female because he was so drunk. Being able to calculate how far your victim is and like hiding whenever the victim stops and watching her phone, it really does not like sound like a drunk person who was unconscious. Then when the victim goes into the building, the suspect is almost like running towards her to attack her. And the fact that he ended up only attacking her face specifically kind of pointed out that there was a specific motive, that he wanted to make her unconscious. And this is so important to analyze the person's behavior because in South Korean law, you can use the excuse of being drunk. Not to mention, he comes back to grab her stuff, belongings 2 times. Now, what police believe happened next was that the suspect was trying to bring the victim into the emergency stairs, but the stairs are actually locked, so he couldn't actually go up. So he was behind this glass door thing, again with no CCTV, and when asked by the police what he did during those missing minutes, he claims that he was just lightly tapping the victim to try and wake her up. Now, unfortunately, the victim was unconscious and she says that she cannot remember at all what happened to her. I think we can all clearly see that why would you take someone just to lightly wake her up after putting her unconscious?
무서워가지고 사람이 가족이 말이 없으니까 죽고 싶어서 그래서 제가 이렇게 막 이렇게 쳤거든요. 네, 사람이 네. 일어나서 뭐 했어요? 그 구석으로 그렇게 빰 이렇게 친 것 같습니다.
Now, for about a year, there was really no question of what happened during these missing minutes because there was no other evidence and CCTV footage of what actually happened. Now, after this case happened, the main focus was to put this guy behind bars. So the prosecutors ended up charging Lee with attempted murder. Now, the trial took about 1 year, and eventually the roundabout kick man was sentenced to 12 years into prison, found guilty of attempted murder. Now, he believed that this is a harsh punishment, so he has appealed the case. But it was only recently when the victim came out and questioned, hey, was there more to this 7 minutes that's been missing? And now she started to wonder if she was actually sexually assaulted during these 7 minutes. And this is a very important thing to find out what happened because he's been only put into prison for 12 years. But if you're found of sexual assault, attempted murder, this can be a sentence up to 35 years. So the prosecutors are asking for 35 years into prison, which is a longer time. And it's something that he deserves if something something else took place. So during the interrogation, when they were suspecting of him obviously having an assault motive, to that Lee claimed, "No way. I even have a girlfriend. I would never. That would make me such a bad guy." And you have to know that this guy is a professional criminal. He has been in and out of prison and probably talked to the police all his life. And it really does make a difference when you have talked to the police before and have gone through this system versus someone who has never gone through and you just kind of blurt out what you did. He knows how to lessen his sentence. And I think I told you guys, I've also been interrogated by the South Korean police before, and it is a very nerve-wracking thing. And there's a lot of times when people do not know the specific laws. So whatever you say and do really can be used against you. If you're smart and you know how to get around it and you know how to talk to the police and the interrogator, that's how this guy was able to technically go through so many crimes yet still become a free man at only age 30. He came back to the girlfriend's apartment saying that they had to leave right away. They went to a motel. He kept looking outside to see where the police was, and he said that the police was gonna come and arrest him anytime soon. He would then borrow his girlfriend's phone, and here is the search keywords of what he searched. He wrote Seomyeon assault. Seomyeon is, I guess, like the specific town that they were in Busan. Don't ask case. Case that happened near me. Bleeding death. And then he searches S assault death. Another clue was that this was the pants that the victim was wearing. You could see this is a very unique jean. This is a button that goes to the side. This is not some buttons that could just fall off on its own. And even if she was physically assaulted, I don't think these are pants that, again, automatically falls down just like regular jeans do. Now, when the victim was found by the police and the rescue team, they clearly remembered that her pants, her button was actually undone and her pants was kind of loose. The pants were not all the way down. And when she went to the hospital, the records also show that her underwear was only in one side of her leg, which is odd because who wears underwear in just one of their legs? Now, unfortunately, during the first swab test, they kind of did not do a thorough job. So when the swab test was done on victim's underwear, there was no trace of suspect's DNA, but the swab was done only on the rubber bands of the underwear, which is kind of pointless. And during that first round of forensic evidence, they did do a DNA swab on the jeans, but the reports did not specify if it was outer or the inner part of the jean. Now, obviously, you could see they had contacts, so you will find that guy's DNA, but you could see this forensic test was done very loosely. And they did not find any fingerprints or DNA on the buttons of the jeans, which made them just focus on attempted murder rather than assault, because that would cause them to potentially lose the case. So in South Korean laws, at least, you have to have specific charges and you have to have enough evidence for all of them. So they did end up only focusing on attempted murder, so they have a better chance of putting this guy behind bars. Now, the friends of Lee also spoke out, and these are just rumors, but according to them, at least to tell his friends that the reason why he attacked this woman was that he saw this woman walking, and that's when he suddenly felt his uncontrollable caveman urge, and his motive was to assault. Another thing was that a month into the hospital stay, the victim says that she noticed she kept bleeding from her rectum, and when she got it checked up, the doctors told her that the rectum was torn. But this was recorded a month after the case, so they could not actually link this specifically, so it was hard to submit this as substantial evidence. The ex-girlfriend of Lee that technically helped him escape came forward saying that he actually had some fantasies about that part. According to his male friends, they clearly remember Lee telling them, hey, there's a way to get away with assault, and that is by using the rectum, because this is more rare and they do not test that area enough. Initially, when this case happened and the police asked her, do you think you have been assaulted? She said no, because she just really couldn't remember what happened. Now, in my opinion, this guy Lee is a psychological liar. This is so important to analyze because the way that these liars answer questions, you might be able to see in some people in day-to-day in our lives of pathological liars that you might have as your friends or people around you. So the classic behavior is when they ask you a specific question, that they kind of twist the answer around to confuse you.
본인이 수정하기 위해 표를 했다는 것에 대해서 그러면 왜 제가 지금 표를 어디서 했을까라고 물어봤습니다. 처음부터 왜 그 표준하고 아까부터 표를 한 거 굉장히 돈이 없이라고 생각하거든요. 안 그러고 실수하셔가지고 기억이 잘 안 나신다는 근데 뭐 어떤 거는 몇몇 팩 아니라고 하고 어떤 거는 기억이 안 난다고 하고 선택적으로 기억하시죠? 네?
진짜 아닙니다.
이들 끌고 나간 부분도 CCTV 보고 확인하셨다면서요. 그때 기억났다면서요.
네.
예? 그 이해 상황은 왜 또 몇몇 팩 명확하게 아니라고 말씀하시는지 합리적으로 이해가 되지 않습니다.
For example, when he was asked about a certain behavior of why he was following the lady and stopping every time she stopped, he would kind of like twist the answer around saying, oh, at the moment I wanted to vomit, and going off and kind of obsessing about the vomiting part rather than really answering the specific question. So they go around about the answers to purposely confuse you. It's not a straightforward answer. It's a confusing answer that you're trying to like calculate in your head, what did he just say? But that's what they're trying to do, to confuse you. The female interrogator here, I think, did a great job because she points that out. She says that, why are you obsessing about vomiting? We're not really answering the question. And ultimately, with a lot of these questions about his behaviors and what he did, he says that, oh, it's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding. That's not what it looks like. And again, the classic things that pathological liars do when they're presented with DNA evidence, they also use that against the prosecutors, such as he says that when talking about finding DNA in the genes, he would say, well, they did not find any fingerprints or DNA on the buttons. And in order to loosen someone's pants, you gotta go through the buttons. So he would obsess about the buttons rather than DNA found on the jeans. So these pathological liars and criminals will have any answers for any questions. And this is why it is so important to be direct and be very like head focused when talking to these pathological liars, is because humans, it's natural to give them the benefit of the doubt, when in fact they're using that to their advantage. When he first went to prison and he was found guilty, he believed that his ex-girlfriend was responsible for tattletaling on him, and he started to send her threatening and nasty letters saying that once he got out, he knew where to find her. He would also tell his prison mates. He even knows her ID number because I believe that the victim sued him on a separate civil lawsuit as well. And in civil lawsuits, that you do get to see the other opponent's ID number and I believe their address as well. Because the police could not do much due to lack of evidence when it came to the assault, and she was upset that he only got 12 years in prison, she decided to take the matter into her own hands and went on to media to tell her story to find that missing 7 minutes. So recently, the investigators decided to retest her jeans and her underwear, and according to the prosecutors, they found credible DNA evidence, although they will not reveal what this evidence is. And apparently, it is enough evidence for them to refile for charges for assault attempted murder this time. And they're asking the judges to call for 35 years in prison time. The victim says that now she has a lifetime of trauma, that she cannot even go out to innocently watch busking and live performances, taking the garbage out, like all the simple things anymore. While editing, I got an update on the new trial, and Lee has been re-sentenced to 20 years in prison, just 8 more from his original sentencing. And the judges ruled that they do agree that his motive was assault, but because the prosecutors lacked enough evidence to prove that an actual act of assault took place, the judges did not give the ultimate 35 years. So they do agree on the motive, but are unsure that it actually took place. Now let's go into talking about defamation and face reveals. Now in America, especially when it comes to criminals, their faces are everywhere. But in South Korea, the police only have the power to reveal someone's identity when it comes to criminals. Now if they find that this person is very dangerous or they did some kind of crime that is severe, that is when they will file for identity reveal. And that's why if you see South Korean media in these criminal cases, a lot of the times their faces are blurred because this is technically like personal rights. Now in this case, because the case only went viral after the fact that the police handed over the case to prosecutors, apparently after that, they cannot file for a face reveal, identity reveal anymore. And on top of that, the suspect filed for an appeal case saying that he's innocent. That's also more of a reason why they said they cannot do an identity reveal. So again, the victim got help of an influencer, and the influencer decided to take the matter into their own hands. If they get sued by the suspect, that they're going to take this on themselves and decide to reveal the identity anyway because they believe that this guy is indeed dangerous, and sometimes the law cannot help and protect the victims and society. So in the identity reveal, his Instagram was revealed to the public. Again, we found out that he's jobless. He's 171 centimeters. He he has a lot of tattoos. We know about his past and now exactly what he looks like. When police reveal someone's like identity and face, sometimes the photos that they reveal are like totally different than what they actually look like, because the picture could be from like 10 years ago. The picture could be photoshopped. So this is also a hot topic right now, and because of this case, people are outraged and calling for all criminals' identities to be revealed and not protected. And if we knew in the past, if Lee was known to the public for being a criminal, would he be able to walk around so confidently hurting other people? Lee was also known throughout his entire life always speaking poorly of women and degrading women. While he was working in clubs, he said that he loves to work there because it is so easy to get women. South Korea is a very safe country. Like, I've recently been there, and like compared to other countries, it's a very safe place. But because it's safe, because there's no weapons allowed, sometimes when these kind of cases happen, it's hard to protect yourself. Like, there's no pepper sprays, there's no knives really, there's no guns, which is again great, but how do we protect ourselves when things like this happen? And hence the reason why I believe that one of the ways that we can protect ourselves in countries like this is a criminal face reveal. But again, some people are calling out saying that, if people with petty crimes or people who want to change their lives get out of that criminal behavior, which is true. People change their lives for the good as well. If their faces are revealed to the public, is that fringing someone's private right? Yet because my face is known to the public and nobody wants to hire me or be friends with me or give a chance of having a better life, that could also be a potential negative side to these identity reveals. It's a matter of question of, will there be more good than harm, or harm more than good? So this is the most hated man that's being talked about right now. I would love to know what you guys have thought about this case and what you guys really happened in those 7 to 8 minutes. I personally believe that yes, something really bad did happen in those missing 7 minutes. But again, I am a firm believer that it is up to the prosecutors to have credible evidence that they gathered rather than talking about rumors. But I do believe that there's definitely more to those 7-8 minutes. Like I said, when he was leaving, it seemed like he was zipping something up, but it could be just his hand motions. I don't know. Let me know what you guys have thought about this case. Thank you so much for watching, and see you guys on my next video. Today we're gonna discuss the story of 6-year-old Tae. While he was playing outside, someone threw acid that ultimately ended his life. The only witness was the boy himself, and through many interviews he tried to describe who did it. But many experts are conflicted on what to distinguish between a child's made-up story and the real scenario. Would love your opinion on whether Tae was telling the true story after hearing these tapes. So this case happened in the Daegu area of Korea. It was May 20th, 1999, where a healthy little 6-year-old Taewon, but we're gonna call him Tae for this video, just came out of his mother's salon, grabbed his bags, and started walking down his usual street to go to the academy. He was so excited to learn, when all of a sudden he was grabbed from the back by an unknown man, forced his mouth open, and poured acid. This was a terrifying acid attack on an innocent 6-year-old. First of all, you might be wondering, why is a child walking down the street alone? Well, actually in these kind of like small towns, usually like their families and neighborhoods all work and live in that same small neighborhood. And I believe the academy was probably a very short walk, so the parents really didn't think much of it, especially back in the 90s. With excruciating pain, Tae ran as far as he can and finally fell in the nearby pool. The acid was so strong that it made the cement black, burned all his clothes and his skin. Especially was pretty bad on his eyes and his throat and his mouth area. Witnesses saw little Tae crying and they got him to the hospital. When he got there, they found out that he had 3rd-degree burn in 40% of his body, especially having the worst burn again in his face. Doctors said that the burn was so bad that he had 5% chance of surviving. As you could see from these tapes, you see Tae doing everything he can and trying to make it as far. Tay survived for 49 days and eventually passed away. One of the only witnesses was Tay, the little boy himself. During this 49 days, the parents did everything that they can to question Tay and get him to talk so that they could figure out who has done this. It was really heartbreaking to see these tapes because he is in excruciating pain and you're trying to ask this little 6-year-old for detailed information of what happened and who he saw and who he heard. In total, the parents record over 300 minutes of Tay speaking about the day he was attacked. With his weak little voice, the mother asked, "Who are you talking to?" "Mom." The mom also asked what he did before the incident, such as, "Remember, you went to Aunt's house, you went for some errands and things like that," asking him basic questions in order to see if the child was in the right mind to answer further questions. So it seems like Tay right now is in a good memory and he recalls everything in reality. Then mom asked what happened after. He even recalled around the exact spot where it happened. One important detail, he said that the man had a black plastic bag while he was throwing the acid. This was a very vital information. But the police didn't believe the little boy. Without any scientific experiment or explanations, police just said, "You can't carry acid on a plastic bag, it's gonna melt the plastic bag." But they found way later that through private testings that actually acid does not melt through plastic. I'm not a science, but they say that acid only burns through things with oxygen, so like our skin and clothes and things like that. But plastic, polyester and things like that don't contain oxygen, and that's why it doesn't burn through plastic bags. When the mom asked, "Did you see anyone? Did you see anyone in that street before it happened?" Tay said, "Yes, Mr. Kim."
누구 봤는데? 응? 아저씨 봤어?
So who was Mr. Kim? Mr. Kim was someone that also lived in the neighborhood and he ran a fried chicken restaurant. It was said that Tay himself also knew Mr. Kim very well, and the person who actually took Tay to the hospital was Mr. Kim. Just to make sure what Tay was saying was true, the mother asked the same question in multiple different occasions, and the only person that he says that he saw and heard was Mr. Kim. Was Tay in his little 6-year-old mind saying this just to make up someone that he knows in order to comfort himself, or was it something that he really saw and heard? And to even confirm further, the mother would ask, "Did you see your dad? Did you see Mr. someone else, Mr. someone else?" And he said no to all those questions, but whenever Mr. Kim came up, he always said yes. Police did interview Mr. Kim, but they say that they didn't really find much. And according to the police, he went through 2 different interviews, and again, they didn't really find anything suspicious. Mr. Kim claims that he was inside his restaurant on the phone at 10:39 a.m. Then on the phone again at 11:25 a.m. So the police thought, hey, he was in his shop, he was on the phone. But the attack happened at around 11:05 a.m. Could he have done this within that 30 minutes of the time frame? He also claims that when he was inside the shop working, he heard a child scream and he also heard another man's name calling Tay out. When he went outside, that's when he discovered Tay sitting in the pool crying. Here is a little bit of contradiction to Mr. Kim's statements. So it wasn't actually Mr. Kim who discovered Tay first. There was a woman who was inside her store nearby and she heard a child crying and she discovered Tay first. That woman claims that she remembers Mr. Kim coming from the opposite direction of his shop. But Mr. Kim claims that he just went around the woman and came like this. That's one of the reasons why it seemed like he was coming from a different direction. Overall, police was pretty much claiming that Tay was a sick child. He is a 6-year-old, so his memories are blurred between made-up things, comfort, and reality. So, I mean, it was crazy because if you hear what one of the police officers said, he said, "I can't just listen to one side. It also feels like Tay's mother is just pushing on one suspect," and the police got even more angry. There was also another witness who was Tay's friend. I'm not sure exactly what the friend saw, but supposedly back then when they tried to get him as a witness, he pointed again Mr. Kim from the pictures that he was there before the attack happened. But according to the police, because Tay's friend was disabled, he was actually, I believe, deaf, the police decided to dismiss him as a witness. Tay's friend was interviewed 15 years later, and he now claims that he doesn't remember since it's been so long. It took literally like 4 months in order to get Mr. Kim's clothes that he wore that day. Come to find out, his shoe and his clothing also had acid on it. Now, another really bad police job. Supposedly, the contaminated clothes and the shoes came all munched in together. So Mr. Kim was claiming that number one, well, he was the one who took Tae to the hospital, so obviously he's also gonna have acid on his clothes and shoes. Number two, the police was saying that the shoe and clothes came in all contaminated together. So technically the acid on the shoes or the clothing could have got mixed up. And they can't tell if this acid was from the attack or from him actually bringing Tae to the hospital. So yeah, even the evidence went to trash. I mean, it is possible that obviously because Mr. Tae probably grabbed the child, he could have got acid on himself as well. But other experts believe that the way that his clothes were stained wasn't correlating with someone that was just helping someone and got acid on their clothes. But again, that was never proven. That was just something said way later on. If the suspect was Mr. Kim, what could have been the possible motive? Like I said, this is a small town where everybody knows everybody. So it was found out that Mr. Kim had a very hard time with money and he was really struggling. So he went around the neighborhood asking others to borrow money. Eventually, Mr. Kim started asking Tae's aunts and uncle to borrow a large sum of money, which the family had declined. It was said that Mr. Kim even went on his knee to beg to Tae's uncle to borrow the amount of money. And when the family declined and decided to pour his anger and revenge on the family. After the case having no credible witnesses and Tae himself passing away, this case went cold. And years later, obviously still the parents seeking for justice, they were able to get the attention of the documentaries and media, and they were able to provide a couple experts. There are many complicated factors to this because people believe that children could obviously, yes, have real facts and memories. Number two, they could have been coerced by someone like a parent. Number three, they could have heard something on TV by someone else and make up these imaginations. And number four, it could be a comfort thing where they just name someone that they know closest. But all of these experts agree that Tae was most likely naming the real scenario of what happened that day. Experts say usually when a child repeats the same answers in different forms, it's not just a child making things up or been coerced, and it is most likely that it is honest truth. Another odd thing was Tae didn't talk about the woman that found him when he was crying on the pole. He only repeated that he heard Mr. Kim's voice multiple times. But remember, Mr. Kim claimed that he was inside his shop working when he heard a child screaming. So the documentary wanted to prove if it was possible for him to hear a child scream all the way from his shop. So they use this sound technology where it is equivalent to max what a child could scream. And all the way from his chicken shop, you can't hear that scream. Also, other witnesses claim that they never heard the child scream, but only when the child was at the pole crying. The really difficult part was that when they asked Tae if he saw the face of the man that attacked him, unfortunately Tae said he didn't see the face. In conclusion, even the child experts in the documentary concluded that they can't confirm that Kim was a suspect or a possible vital witness, but can't rule it out as well. Any of you guys watching are child experts. Do you think that Tae was naming Mr. Kim because he was just comfortable with him, like an uncle? Or do you think he really heard his voice? So 15 years later, only with a couple days before the statute of limitation, the family wanted to meet with the police to get a reevaluation and open the case again. Unfortunately, the police said that because there's not enough witnesses, they can't do anything about it, and that Tae's statements are not enough. The last thing that the family can do was a demonstration, standing outside of the court and trying to get some attention. And back in 2014, Tae's father sued Mr. Kim for connection to Tae's case. I'm sure the father couldn't just watch this case go cold. But unfortunately, due to lack of evidence, the case was dismissed and left as a cold case even till today.
잘 자. 태양이도 잘 자. 엄마 보고 있을게.
But one good thing really did happen, and because of Taewon's case, the family was able to pass something called the Taewon's Law, which allowed certain murder cases that happened after August 2000s to abolish the statute of limitation. Due to this law and having the statute of limitation abolished, police was able to solve multiple murder cases, multiple cold cases, including the infamous Hwasong case because of Tae's law. Unfortunately, this law passed after the statute of limitation of Tae's cold case, so technically, even if police was able to find who did this to Tae, they can't prosecute the suspect. I know, it's crazy, right? Honestly, I hope that one day when the suspect is found, even if they can't prosecute him, I hope that the internet and the whole world knows about who the suspect was and he will be shamed forever by the public. Remember to share this video with your friends so that we could all talk about this story and hopefully solve it one day. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you in my next video. I need everybody to help share this video today. Comment, like this video, share this with your friends because still to this day, the victim has never gotten justice. Everybody knows who could be the main suspect, but this person was never brought to trial because of loopholes in the law. I'm so surprised that there's no other YouTubers that I could find who talked about this case. Only a famous documentary, 48 Hours, that covered it. We're gonna be talking about victim Carolyn today. She was an English teacher in South Korea and she was brutally murdered. So Miss Carolyn was teaching English in Nepal, Japan before she came to Korea. People describe her as being a very cheerful, funny, adventurous, and she loved to explore. While she was teaching English in Japan, she even met a man named Tomoyuki. The two fell in love and he even proposed to her and they were supposed to get married. Just before their love grew into something even bigger, she took a job in South Korea teaching English again. She joined a group of English teachers in South Korea and they said that she immediately became friends with everyone, and that's just how she was. Funny, bubbly, and just a big personality. I remember when I was young, and very young when I was in Korea, like 6, 7, 8 years old, I went to English hagwon academies. So I remember when I went to academies and when I would see a foreigner, non-Asian, I would get super excited and nervous because it's like your first time in your life ever seeing someone that's very different than you. And there's a lot of people who want to work in South Korea just because it's so fun there and adventurous. Among many other English teachers that was there, Carolyn met a woman named Kathy, who was pretty much the leader of the whole English Academy group. The co-workers described Carolyn and Kathy being like BFFs and besties, and they were always sticking together, just like you would have with your own girlfriends. After work and on the weekends, they would go to Itaewon and just party, and they felt a little bit home, like they were in America. One of the last days Carolyn was seen alive was December 17th, 1988. Carolyn, Kathy, some of the other teachers, and some Korean students went to the mountains to take pictures and explore. And here's some of the last photos of Carolyn and the students. Tomoyuki, who was a fiance of Carolyn, even was planning a trip to South Korea so that they could plan and eventually get married. It was on December 20th, the working day, and Carolyn was nowhere seen at work at the academy. No one was really freaking out. Some coworkers said that it was totally possible for people to miss work, but one person was very frantic that Carolyn was not at work, and that was the leader, Kathy. Coworkers say Kathy was very frantic, very nervous, and asking around if anyone has seen Carolyn. She wasn't picking up her phone, and Kathy was convinced something could have happened to Carolyn. So some of the coworkers decided to go check up on Carolyn and just see if she was at her home. A group of Korean students took the English teachers to Carolyn's apartment, and the door was unlocked, they say. It was then when Kathy decided to go inside Carolyn's room, and that was when she was the first person to discover Carolyn brutally murdered in her own room. They soon called an ambulance, and this became one of the biggest stories in South Korea, a brutal murder of a foreigner. There was evidence of her fighting back, including hand marks. Her throat was cut from ear to ear, and she was stabbed 30 times, and there was blood just everywhere. All the coworkers, the English coworkers, were really frightened, thinking that it was probably another Korean who killed this foreign woman just because maybe out of hate crime. Everybody thought it was like a drunk Korean old age man who just came in, took the opportunity, and just unfortunate thing happened. A lot of people say if you're in a foreign country, you could be an easy target because it's harder for you to call anyone for help. Maybe you don't know where to call for help. And the English teachers were actually all afraid that this could happen to them. A couple days later, they had this memorial ceremony for Carolyn inside this English academy, and Kathy was the one who led this memorial because she was her BFF. Kathy, being the best friend of Carolyn, she even wrote a letter to Carolyn's family, trying to comfort them and saying, let me know if you want to know anything, because she was her best friend. And she also wrote that she wanted to one day meet them. Carolyn's family was devastated, especially they were in America, and to have their daughter be brutally murdered in another country, that must be just absolutely frustrating. Tomoyuki eventually still flew to South Korea, and he was there at the memorial, and he stayed with Kathy and their roommate Sandra. This was a huge case, and I don't know why people do this, but you know, these English coworkers even got prank calls from people saying that they know who the killer is. But later they found out that this was a prank call, you know, people just wanting to be evil. And so this random woman called the coworker saying that her ex-boyfriend was the murderer because she wanted to get back at him. I mean, there's just crazy people out there that prank call. So this person turned out not to be the murderer, and the police was trying to find out who could have done this to Carolyn. Now, based on the forensic evidences and how she died, forensic professionals believe that this had to be someone that Carolyn was very close to. Police usually say that random acts of murder are usually not brutal. Usually, if it's accidental or someone that they didn't know, they won't go as far as, you know, slitting the throat or going very brutal. And number two, there was no forced entry. No evidence that the door was broken or the windows. And number three, there was 2 coffee cups inside Carolyn's room where she passed away. This led forensic investigators to believe that someone very comfortable was in Carolyn's room, them two just drinking coffee when this happened. Now, while this investigation was going on, coworkers say that Kathy looked so depressed, like she lost about 15 pounds. I mean, everybody was at the shock at the moment, and especially Kathy, being the best friend, she just took it the hardest. She wanted to go back to the US to kind of distance herself from this horrific thing that has happened, and her coworkers even encouraged her because she was just looking so distraught and they could not focus on their job. Reviewing the forensic evidence, police grew suspicions and wanted to interview people that was the most closest to Carolyn while she was working in South Korea. And the closest people was Kathy and Sandra. Sandra was Kathy's roommate. Now, right around this time, Kathy actually left back to the US, and the police were only able to interview Sandra. Investigators started questioning Sandra and asked her if she had anything to do with Carolyn's murder. The investigator said that she paused for 30 seconds and then just said no, which is really odd. Like, why would you have to pause to say that? Sandra eventually had to take a lie detector test, and when asked if she knew the murder weapon or where this murder weapon was, she replied no, and she failed the lie detector test. This is when Sandra started confessing to everything that she knew about Carolyn's murder. Now, shockingly, Sandra started to confess something that no one believed would ever happen. She claimed that one night Kathy came home telling her that she killed Carolyn. Sandra claimed that she was in disbelief that this has ever happened, and that they both decided to go to Carolyn's apartment, where indeed Sandra saw the body of Carolyn. This is when Kathy told Sandra to help her to make it look like it was an intruder and that it was accidental. And for some reason, Sandra says that Kathy manipulated her. Let me know what you guys think of this manipulation, but that she manipulated her to help her to make it look like it was an accident, or that it was a robbery gone wrong. So they threw Carolyn's stuff all around the floor, threw away the murder weapon, and next, what happened is crazy. Now, for some odd reason, at first, Sandra confessed to the police that it was her who cut the throat of Carolyn, just in case that she was alive and that they both get in trouble. Sandra also said that she cleaned up the knife that Kathy used to first murder Carolyn. Now, later on, Sandra retracted these statements, saying that these were just memories implanted into her brain during the police interrogation. think this means that the police was really grinding down on her and being under intense pressure and interrogation, she just confessed to something that she didn't do. That's what she's possibly claiming. So who knows if she actually did this or not, or who's telling the truth. Eventually, Sandra pled guilty and was charged for her harboring a criminal and suppressing evidence, and she was only sentenced to 1 year in Korean jail. For some reason, Sandra was released early from jail, so she technically only served 6 months, but she did agree to try to help the FBI in order to get a confession from Kathy. Now remember, this happened back in 1988, so I don't believe there was even DNA evidence that was collected, so the only thing that police could go by is a confession. So the main question is, what was the motive? Why did Kathy have to eliminate her best friend, her bestie, according to everybody? I mean, they were having an awesome time in Korea, teaching English in a foreign country, having fun in Itaewon. What went wrong here? Now, according to these two workers, they were the only very few people that knew that Kathy was actually lesbian. Kathy would always talk about Carolyn, and she even confessed to them that she was in love with Carolyn. Kathy apparently felt for Carolyn very hard, and she was almost obsessive, telling Tamara that she thinks that Carolyn likes her and that she wants to make a move on her. They knew that Carolyn wasn't gay and that she wouldn't be interested in dating Kathy. According to these coworkers, it seemed like Kathy was just so in love with Carolyn and could not stop even talking about her. Now, so this is what the investigators believe actually happened to Carolyn on the night of December 1988. This is just a possible scenario, just to let you guys know, but they believe that Kathy and Carolyn were talking inside Carolyn's room that night, and Kathy started to confess to Carolyn that she wanted to advance their relationship and wanted more than friends. Police say that they believe Kathy leaned in for a kiss to Carolyn, and this is when Carolyn rejected, and Kathy all of a sudden snaps and she decided to just get rid of Carolyn. She could not control her emotions and feelings, and for some reason decided to end her life. I can't even imagine the shock that Carolyn would have at that moment, seeing your best friend in a foreign country trying to attack you because you did not want to advance the relationship. If this story is true, it's just mind-boggling how someone, just because they rejected you, that you would lash out like that. Police were now firm that it was Kathy who has murdered Carolyn, and the Korean police requested Kathy to be extradited back to South Korea for questioning and trial. But because in 1980s, during this time, there was no extradition treaty between US and South Korea, and therefore she couldn't be forced to be extradited back to South Korea. And obviously she's not going to be willingly come to the US, according to what has happened. When Carolyn's family went to the police, they told them that they could not arrest her because she didn't commit the crime on US soil. Again, back then there was no law saying that a US citizen who killed another US citizen in a foreign country could be trialed in US. There was no law apparently back then. I don't know why, but family of Carolyn were devastated, and the father was trying to do everything that he can to get some kind of media attention so that the police would care enough to try and get Kathy. Due to the family's hard work, they were eventually able to get the police to interrogate Kathy. Now, when she was questioned, Kathy claimed that she did not murder Carolyn and that her roommate Sandra's confessions were all lies, and that she was never in love with Carolyn. But she took a lie detector test and she was found to be deceptive, meaning she failed the lie detector test. Now, this is not enough evidence to convict anyone, so the FBI got the help of Sandra, and she decided to try and get a confession out of Kathy. So Sandra claimed that she had a recorder set by the FBI in her clothing. She went to Kathy's house, and the first thing Sandra asked was, "How could you have killed Carolyn?" Kathy just dismissed her and said, "I don't know what you're talking about," and just closed the doors. It's been 30 years and no suspect, nobody was brought to justice in connection to Carolyn's death. Carolyn's family had no choice and they were devastated, but they did fight for their daughter, and eventually in 1994 there was a law passed where US citizens can be prosecuted if they commit a crime in another country. And yes, finally now there is an extradition treaty between US and South Korea. Now, a lot of you guys might be asking, well, can they extradite Kathy now? Now, unfortunately in Korea, regarding Carolyn's case, the statute of limitation has expired. And apparently, according to Carolyn's family, the South Korean police told them that all the evidence was destroyed. What? I don't know how that's possible. I thought they were supposed to keep all the files just in case that a case gets revealed later on. If you guys work in the police enforcement, let me know if this happens where they just like shred the papers and get rid of evidences if it's been too long. But anyway, due to all these circumstances, it is highly unlikely, professionals say, that Kathy will ever be extradited back to South Korea. What is Miss Kathy doing now? She apparently has been living a quiet life in Washington. At first, Kathy declined an interview with 48 Hours, claiming that this was a painful memory and that she did not want it to be brought back. So, like Savage, 48 Hours decided to go to the school that she was working in, and she apparently is a counselor in Western Washington University. So she's been working here for about 20 years, living just a quiet, comfortable life. So basically, the documentary crew barges into the school. Kathy has no idea that these people are coming to interview her. The host tells her that the investigators strongly believe that she murdered Carolyn, and that's when Kathy gets very nervous and says, I have to say I'm innocent and I don't know what happened. And that she failed the polygraph test back then because she was traumatized about the situation. She then went to say that possibly Sandra was the one who murdered Carolyn. You can see her licking her lips, kind of really extremely nervous. Now this could be because you have like a news crew with cameras and people just barging in all of a sudden asking you about a murder that happened 30 years ago. And yes, you could be nervous, but if you guys are one of those behavior professionals, let me know what you guys think about this interview. This is a statement from Washington University. They stated that they had no problems with Kathy for the last 20 years that she has worked with the university. So the question that I have is, who do you think did it? Who murdered Carolyn? And the question that the documentary also had was, if Kathy was the suspect, do you think she could lash out again? I mean, she is quite older now, but do you think it's possible she could commit another crime? Still till this day, Carolyn's family is searching for answers and trying to find any ways that they can do to bring these people into justice. Like I said, there was no other YouTubers who have covered this story, at least that I could find. But if we get enough awareness, we can help solve these cases, you guys. And if you guys are early to my videos, I always reply to my early birds. Have a magical day, you guys. We're going to be diving into one of the biggest cases that is happening right now in Korea. It's a man named Lee Ki-young. He is a 30-year-old man, and they're comparing him and calling him the real-life parasite. They believe that he could have been a mass killer, but thank God he was caught early due to a lot of CCTV, making it more accessible to report cases. Now, why this guy's case is blowing up is because his past is so bizarre. It's important to talk about someone like this because a parasite like him could be living among us. And yes, like a parasite, the movie we're comparing to. And this guy has been dating so many people and bringing so many people into his life that yes, there were hundreds of people that was in contact with a dangerous man like Lee. This video was unplanned, so there's new information coming out daily. So today, let's just go throughout the timeline. And as you guys know, the YouTube algorithm has been very, very tough recently. I love delivering these cases to you guys because there's a lot of cases that are not in English. So I spend a lot of time translating them and putting this video together for you guys. Just a like, leaving a comment about today's topic, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell. All of this really helps me so that we can continue bringing awareness to important cases like this around the world. And yes, I did get a new mic, so let me know if you guys are feeling this new mic quality. So during Christmas, it's supposed to be a day of celebration, warmth with your family, but in Christmas of 2022, a female would report to the police claiming that inside of her boyfriend's apartment's closet, she found a body. And this happened on Christmas Day 2022, so pretty recently. So when police went to this apartment that they got a report on, they went to the closet and indeed they did find a man in his 60s completely deceased. And this man turned out to be, again, a man in his 60s who was a taxi driver for a living, and his family actually have been looking for him for a couple of days now because their father wasn't coming home. So what happened? Now, the person who was living in this apartment and the reporter's boyfriend was a man named Lee Ki-young. Come to find out, on December 20th, Lee was drinking with his girlfriend's parents, his current girlfriend's parents, and trying to like get to know the parents better, you know, being a good boyfriend, possibly getting married and things like that. So Lee got drunk, had some soju, and decided to go home driving drunk. Now, it seems like previously he has done this many times, and he was caught with DUI 2 times, and he was sentenced to even probation or prison sentencing. And if you're found again, it's going to be even a longer punishment. Now, this particular day after his girlfriend's meeting, he decided to still drive drunk, and this is when the accident happened with the taxi driver. He was making an illegal right turn on a red, and it seems like on the green, the taxi was going straight forward and crashed into Lee's car. Now, in this exact accident video, apparently Lee told the taxi driver to not call the police and he'll give him cash for a mediation or settlement on the spot. And we will later find out why he really did not want to call the police other than his previous DUI reasons. So Lee instructed the taxi driver to come with him to his Paju apartment and he'll give him a lump sum of cash that he had stashed in his house. Now, who does this as an MZ generation? Like a 30-year-old having a lump of cash in his house? Like, that's not really common unless he was doing something illegal. And of course, later we'll find out that this was absolutely false. He had no money in the house. Now, regardless, the taxi driver agreed and came to Lee's apartment, came all the way inside. Now, according to Lee, his version of story is that the taxi driver requested for a substantial amount of money for mediation, and the taxi driver decided to call 112 or the emergency number to call the police, reported if Lee was unwilling to give him the money that the taxi driver requested. Now, Lee says that he got angry that it was too much money. In the spot, in the moment, he decided to unalive the taxi driver. Again, this is according to Lee. We'll later find out that Lee is not a credible person at all. Now, obviously, the family was in desperation looking for their father who was not coming home. They would send him messages, call him on his phone, and apparently they did get a message, a reply. I don't have batteries on my phone. I can't reply. I don't want to come home. Of course, later we'll find out that the person who was replying was actually Lee pretending to be taxi driver. Now, during that 5 days, that short 5 days from the 20th to 25th when the body was discovered, apparently Lee stole A's personal information, his credit cards, and decided to take out a loan under his name for about $40,000 in loan. He would also use this money to buy his girlfriend couple ring, stay in expensive hotels and food, and etc. Now, when obviously Lee was taken into custody for questioning, this was just the surface, the scratch to the surface that they were going to find out about this guy and how scary this normal looking guy was. Now, when police was interrogating Lee about the victim and the taxi driver, they found out that the apartment that Lee was living in was under someone else's name. The apartment was under a woman named Miss J, who was in her 50s. When police questioned who is Miss J, how are you related to her, and where is she, because she could not be found anywhere and she was not living in the apartment and they didn't know who this was, Lee explained to them this woman, Miss J, in her 50s was actually Lee's previous girlfriend that he lived with. And out of nowhere, he confessed that he killed her back in August. And this is where we get to the keyword parasite, like the movie. I'm sure you guys have seen the movie where there's like unknown man and people living under the roof of this family. And they're kind of like sucking the life out of this family without their knowledge. So this man, Lee, was living under his girlfriend's apartment, sucking her money, finances, her house, and eventually ended up unaliving her. Now, the case gets really weird and odd because according to the neighbors, it seems like Lee and Miss J were in a relationship since April of 2022 till August, so it was about 4 months. And the neighbors report to each other calling them honey and baby, so it seems like they were really in a relationship. But again, it's really odd that Miss J was over 20 years older than Lee, which tells you a little more information about the odd situations that Lee put himself in. When police was looking for Miss J's body, Lee claimed that he disposed her in a nearby Paju River / an empty landmass. So currently the police are still looking for Miss J's body. It's not really that big of a landmass either. On top of that, it seems like Lee was pretending to be Miss J, just like the taxi driver, changing her Kakao profile picture multiple times to let people know that she's alive. She would respond to her family and friends that was worried about her. And he would say that, I can't talk on the phone right now. I'm busy. I'm going through things. So her family and friends actually thought that she was alive. Police also found that after August, when she passed, he took out loan under her name and used all of her credits up to about $15,000. Another mystery here could be a possible motive for the killing. It seems like Lee and Miss J had some kind of a personal contract. Lee owed Miss J about $200,000 and he promised to pay her. Now they are investigating what this is all about, but as you could see, Lee is attached to money. They were in a relationship for only 4 months, you guys. That is super early. Like 4 months is nothing. And to have Miss J possibly loan Lee a substantial amount of money and to be living together, and she's 20 plus years older, like something just is not right here. Recently, he has changed of where the body was disposed. At first, he said that he threw the body into the river. Police were looking for it. It's not really that deep either, and they can't find it. And Lee recently changed that he dug it into the land. Now, apparently, when Lee changed of where the body was disposed, he stated, "This is my last present to the police." He believes that he is above the police. He believes that he is in total control of this narrative. Why don't you just confess where the body is buried? According to professionals, they do this potentially because they might be exposing themselves to more lies. For example, if Miss J's body is found, they do an autopsy on her body and it does not match the story of what Lee gave them, or possibly even more crimes. Maybe he did something extra to the body or when she was alive. You never know, so they don't want that to be revealed. It could also be a way of controlling the narrative, controlling the police and investigators. At least he has a secret and police need him to open up. So it's like a little bit of a power dynamic they still like to play even after they have been arrested. Now it gets even weirder with Lee. Hours before he was arrested, he was seen approaching random guys in their 20s. There was about 6 guys in their 20s. He approached them randomly, telling them he was this wealthy guy. His family has buildings and he came from like crazy backgrounds, crazy rich Asian kind of story. And he told them that I'll buy you gogi or meat, Korean barbecue. I'll buy you some drinks. So obviously guys in their early 20s, I believe, or mid 20s. I mean, random person is saying that like, I'll buy you gogi, it's Christmas. Korean has that sharing culture. So I guess they believe that it was fine to go with this guy. And they're a bunch of guys. Lee seems like a cool dude. As you see, this guy, he doesn't look like a monster. He looks so normal. And his neighbors who lived in that apartment says that Lee was very well respected. Like he bowed really well to older people. He was always smiling and he seemed like a total normal, respectful young gentleman. According to the guys, the 6 guys, apparently what they talked about in the table was even stranger. Lee told them again that he had a lot of money and that he could pay them like millions of dollars and would ask them, would you kill someone for millions of dollars? And after they leave the restaurant, you see on the CCTV that all of a sudden he started a fight with them. According to them, they said he was like a monster that they could not get through to or talk to, and he was in his own little world. People who have known Lee in the past came forward with information that he was actually also married 2 times in the past, and apparently he also has a child. And then in 2018 he would get married to another woman, and as you could see here, there are photos, evidence that he was married in 2018. From how I feel, marriages in South Korea is a big deal. Like there's nice venues, it's a lot of money. I'm thinking like, how did this guy even trick all these people? Where did he even get the money? Because apparently they found out that he's jobless. His parents, his family, his grandmother, all different stories that he told to all different people was all false. He had no money. He didn't have millions of dollars. His family did not own buildings and corporations. He was a jobless man. He was literally a parasite sucking off of other people's finances and money, and that's just how he lived. And he was lying to every single person around him in order to build this life that was completely non-existent. According to the most recent news, the story about his first wife and having a kid does not exist. It was actually his friend's kid that he was claiming that was his kid. It is so confusing. Again, we don't know to what extent Lee's truth and lies are. Police also say that within the year in 2022, he was in contact with over 380 people, and they're rechecking to see if everybody can be reached and is fine and that there's no more victims. First of all, 380 people in 1 year is a lot, and is constantly seeking either validation or attention from people, and he's constantly trying to like suck people's energy and life out of them. I mean, for me in 2022, including my friends and family, including new people, I was probably in contact with literally less than 15 people probably. Also, it's being reported that police are finding multiple girlfriends that he just met like very shortly. And apparently before this girlfriend that reported him to the police, there was another girlfriend that he shortly lived with for about a week. And before that was the woman that he killed. Lee is claiming that there are no more victims, and police are trying to fact check that. The most recent report is that they found 4 different DNA samples from Lee's apartment. One being a male DNA, obviously being the taxi driver. They also found 3 other DNA that belongs to females. They're checking right now, but they do believe that 2 DNAs could be one of his most recent girlfriend and one of the victim that he unalived. And 1 female DNA that they cannot find out who she is right now. It could be a maid that he hired to clean in the past. So what does this all mean for Lee and who this guy is? So they believe that Lee has an intense craving for financial gain, but the way he does it is by unaliving victims. According to one home inspector that remembers going to Lee's house, he remembers that they're strangers first of all. And out of nowhere, Lee told his home inspector, "My parents just passed away. I have big amounts of money coming in." And honestly, the home inspector guy was like, "I've never asked you anything. I don't know you. I don't know why you're telling me that. Like, why are you flaunting your wealth and your business to a random stranger?" Like, okay. So with all this reported information, experts believe that he could be showing signs of something called Ripley's syndrome. People might be a little more familiar with this word because it was shown in the new hit drama called The Second Anna. Ripley syndrome is an antisocial personality disorder where someone believes about the lie they created for themselves. They cannot come into terms or believe that their real reality is real. Some signs of Ripley syndrome is listed as repeated deception and lies. Be manipulative to get what you want, disobeying the rules, committing a crime, tends to be impulsive, be arrogant and think himself superior to others, lack empathy and cannot respect others, having bad relationship with other people, even tends to hurt your partner or others, irresponsible, being rude, such as temperamental, threatening, insulting, and cursing. But beyond personality disorder, they are going to do a psychopath test on Lee to see where he lies in the psychopath range. But I personally also have met compulsive liars. Both of them were female, actually. And I remember one of this females, she was an actress, and she was so pretty, you guys. She was so pretty, skinny, you know, that perfect Korean beauty image. And I just remember her constantly talking about herself. She doesn't even care about what you say. She just constantly nonstop talks, and I'm like, where do you even get the energy? She told me that also she was really close to this very famous actor in Korea and how they went to school together. Her brother, her family owns this and that, and like she just constantly nonstop talked about herself. And later we found out that everything she was saying was false. It absolutely gives shivers down my spine because she could have done something to me in the future and used me to get what she wanted. I'm not saying that she's a criminal or bad person, but I do think that these people really need help. We've also seen Netflix's Anna story. That movie is also about a woman completely making things about her family, her finances, and she somehow steals money, resources from other people to feed her life when everything she talked about herself was completely fake. In Korea, even revealing the suspect's identity and their face is a big deal. So the fact that they revealed this guy's face, they knew who they're dealing with. They know that they're dealing with someone very dangerous. People find it scary that Lee is only 30 years old and he's completely made his life so complicated and lived such a twisted, complicated lifestyle that nobody can figure out who actually he is. And just like a parasite, these people walk among us and leech off of us, and sometimes you don't know until it's too late. So I'll keep you guys updated if there's any new information about Lee, but I just thought that this story was so crazy. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to leave a comment down below, like, and subscribing. It really helps to hit the algorithm on my channel. See you in my next video. Today we're going to be talking about Korea's happy face killer. And I'm going to call this story the baby face or the happy face killer. I think both really resonates with today's story. Now there is a happy face killer American version. His name is Keith Jefferson, who was a guy that had a wife, had kids, and he was so normal in his own circle. But at night, he would have these dark thoughts of killing so many women. He was a serial killer. I think he killed up to 8 people. So there is sort of that Korean version of the happy face killer, which we're going to be talking about today. His name is Che. And this case shocked Korea when it happened because he is a happy face. Nobody suspected him because he had kids. He was living such a normal life, and look at him. Look at so many pictures that you'll see. Like, you'll never guess what was behind this baby face. I also want to ask, do you know anyone in your life that was kind of living the double life? You know, someone that was very happy, always smiling, that seemed normal, but in the back have dark thoughts and they're like a different person during the day and night. So Choi was a 31-year-old man, and he was described as very hardworking. He did everything for people that he really cared about, such as his family, his co-workers, and people that he was close to. In these chats, a friend even says that Choi vowed to quit alcohol and decided to just work really hard for his family now that he was in his early 30s. He also worked at the quick service business, where you basically hire someone to like deliver whatever you want for you, and the business seemed to be going pretty well in the beginning. So here is his co-workers describing as someone who was like a baby, had a lot of egg or cuteness to him, and he did work diligently at their company. They also say that he never caused trouble during work. Che grew up being a wrestler since he was an elementary school student, so although he was pretty short in his height, they say that he was only about 5'5" to 5'6". He still had a very good physique, and he was very strong. He won a lot of medals growing up because he was such a great wrestler. So around April of 2020, Che's family, especially Che's wife, had a friend named A. She was 34 years old, and they describe her as someone that really helped the family out during times of need. Especially A helped them out financially whenever they needed. But one day, A goes missing, and she is nowhere to be found. A's father comes inside the house, and they could tell that she ran out of the house abruptly because she was about to eat her dinner. There was food on the table, and it just seemed like there was no plan for her to leave indefinitely. They found a couple of CCTVs and a weird transaction. They saw that she transferred about $500 to Che's name, and after that, silent. She never used her phone again. Police looked into some of the CCTVs and saw that A was getting into a black car. And in one of the scenes, it seems like she was trying to get out of the car, but then someone tugs her really strongly and she just like gets back into the car. Only 4 days later, another woman by the name B. Now, she was 29 years old, and she said that she was gonna go meet some guy that she met in an online chatting app to her friends. Then she just never came home. Not too long after, they found the body of B in the Jeonju province. Now, B was not from this area. She was actually from somewhere else, but she traveled all the way to this neighborhood to meet someone, and then she appears murdered. In the CCTV footages while looking for B, they also found that she got into a black car. In these chilling videos, you see the car pull up to a gas station, and she is actually trying to flee. But then this man overpowers her and just puts her into the car and slams the door. She was not able to overpower this random man. Soon enough, police found out who this man was. And to everybody's surprise, it was Mr. Choi, the 31-year-old baby face, happy face killer. And shockingly, it was revealed that the day he was questioned about A's disappearance, right after the police interview, he went out and killed B, all within 2 hours of meeting her. Like, who in their right mind gets interviewed by the police and then you go off and do the same thing again? Not only Korea, but the family members and co-workers of Che was so shocked. How can this guy who was hardworking, He was an angel by day. How can this guy be the suspect of these two brutal murders? This goes to show you that you just never truly know anyone. Now, with the overwhelming evidence, Che did confess that he was a suspect of these two victims. So people started digging into Che's life and how he could live such a dual life. And they found something really interesting from his childhood. When he was growing up, like I said, he was a wrestler. But his childhood friends remember Che differently than his now adult friends or co-workers. Growing up, Che was kind of a small guy. You know, he was kind of short, and maybe that's one of the reasons why he started wrestling and using his physique, his physical strength to overcome that. His childhood friends say that he was actually one of the gang leaders in his little group when he was growing up. He would take his juniors, take them up to the mountain, beat them up, and just leave them there. I mean, I get it, sometimes boys grow up that way, but whenever he would chat with his friends and he would get offended by the littlest thing, he would just explode and blow up. So people were afraid of him and they called him the Jinju King because of how much he got into fights. Now, because of his explosive personality, he was even kicked out of the wrestling team in high school. Not only that, but they remember Che being very, very inappropriate and very aggressive with females especially. They describe him as someone that liked females too much. And whenever he would meet his boys, he would say, "Do you know any females? Introduce me," and would also have very degrading words for females as well. Che was also known to have this obsessive personality. In 2012, he had a girlfriend that he was meeting for about 3 years, and once when she said that she wanted to break up with him, he got so angry and he couldn't take no for an answer that he manipulated his girlfriend by saying, "Let's go on a last breakup vacation," and then kidnapped her and held her captive, knife point, for 6 hours. Now, eventually she did survive and he did let her go, and she did report it to the police, and he got about 3 to 5 years in jail sentence, but he would beg to the victim's family for mediation to the point that they cannot turn him down. They said that he would call him every single day, call their work, and just harass them for a mediation. They did mediate, and he didn't end up going to prison for long, only about 6 months. And in 2015, he stole thousands of dollars from a supermarket he was working at because he needed money to pay back his online gambling debt. He also did not get too much prison sentence for this, and he got away again. A little after that, after he got married, him and his wife knew a neighborhood, another couple, and they sometimes met up to chat and things like that. And one day he pulled his friend's wife over, took her into his car, and then confessed to her that he liked her. She claims that he tried to kiss her. She obviously refused. He got very aggressive and they did end up calling the police. But in this time as well, he would call the victim's husband thousands of times, like an obsessive person, to the point where they ended up mediating because he was so threatening to them, saying that he will do something to their whole family if they don't mediate. So you could see what kind of personality this guy has. I mean, how his wife was okay with this, I have no idea, but you could tell the dual life that he was living and how he was portraying himself to his coworker and his immediate family versus outside people. So why did he all of a sudden explode in 2020? What made him do this? And a lot of people think that because he was under probation for a long time, and if he does get caught, he actually has to go to jail. And I believe his probation time was over, and that's when he finally exploded. Che claims that he pulled over A one day because he wanted to chat. Now, a lot of people think that he, again, had some kind of odd, creepy feelings for a lot of these women, and that's why he pulled them over. A came down of her apartment abruptly. It seems like she didn't tell her friend Che's wife that she was meeting with Che. According to Che, he wanted to borrow some money from A, but when A refused, he claims that she belittled him, and that ticked him off, and decided to strangle her and kill her. Like, that's it. It's not like he had any crazy animosity before that or they had some kind of drama or episodes. No. Just because she said no to borrowing money, he exploded. After that, he also stole her gold bracelet that she got from her ex-boyfriend and gifted it to his wife. It was said that A and Che's wife was very close, so when Che was gifted with that gold bracelet, people questioned how did she not know that this belonged to her friends? What kind of red flags did she overlook while she was dating or being married to Che? I believe that in my personal opinion, because during the day he had to act like an angel, he had to somewhere put aside his devil and his anger. And I believe he got a little tasting of killing and picking on the weak since he was younger, and he saw females as the weaker person that he needed to extrude his anger towards. So once he did that, I believe he felt very comfortable to do this again. So it was also found out that throughout the year he was talking to over 1,000 women in a random chatting app. This is an app where anyone could sign up. They don't ask you for any personal information, so you are talking to just the randomest person. And B happened to be one of the women that he met at the random dating app. Once they met, no one knows the reason why, but Che decided to take his anger on her and decided to strangle her the same way. Che claims that he took depression pills, so he doesn't remember anything about what he did to B and why he did it. So even till this day, there's absolutely no explanation of why he has done this. The thing that is so different about Che is the fact that he didn't want to hide much. The fact that he transferred money to his own bank. The fact that he still had the victim's clothes inside of his car. The fact that he went to places with a lot of CCTV. What was going through his mind? Why did he not try to clean up his act? Because you know you were gonna get caught sooner or later. Another bizarre behavior by Choi, he even messaged A's friend, let's call her D, pretending to be A, and asked her to come over. And police believe this happened exactly right after he killed A. When the texting didn't work, Choi even called D right after the murder, asking her to come and help find his wife. But of course, D knew that this was a weird guy and she refused. But can you believe what could have happened if she actually went over? And what kind of thought process was he in to lure in more people to kill right after he did this? Professionals believe that his murders were out of an urge and he did not plan these, so most of it was not premeditated. Although he couldn't control his urges, at the same time he was able to control it because look, to his work, to his coworkers, and to his immediate family, he was able to portray this kind angel image and only show a good side to those that could benefit him, such as his coworkers, like his way of getting money. But to people that he believed he did not get any benefit from, he showed his dark side. Professionals believe that he could have been a multi serial killer, but he was caught early on. Che was eventually sentenced to life in prison, but I did hear that with good behavior, you could be out in 20 years. But I think the moral of today's story is the fact that you have to be especially very careful when it comes to a dating life. When it comes to people that you're meeting online, you just never know who you're going to get. And I just don't understand why people would be on random chatting apps in the first place. Maybe for fun, okay, but to actually meet up people is just so dangerous. And especially when you're dating someone, you ignore a lot of the red flags because you have this romantic emotions for this person that you start to overlook literally everything and you become blind. So if you see a lot of red flags in your relationship or people that you meet, please take that into consideration because it could end up very badly. Love and romance and relationship should be consistent. It should not be like a roller coaster of emotions, like strong and high and low emotions every single day. No one should be putting their hands on you at all, especially like Che's story today and how his wife just stuck on through all of that. I have no idea. Like I said, it's scary. Some people just have such a double life that even their closest family and relatives don't know. I am still confused by what kind of person Che was, and it was so random. He killed someone that he didn't know at all, and he killed someone that his friends were close to, his wife's friend. And that just gets to tell you, you should not judge anybody by their physical appearance. I would like to know what are some red flags that you have met during relationships. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to hit the like button and let me know what you guys have thought about the story. Bye. This case all started in January 2004 when a woman in her 40s was discovered stabbed in her home, but she survived. The woman couldn't see the man's face as it was very dark and it was covered with a mask and a hat. But starting from this point, 2004 was such a crazy time in Korea because there was actually multiple serial killers, and Seoul was just haunted during this time because you just don't know who it is, and you walking late at home after work, you could be targeted. February 2004, a woman in her 20s walking at 7:30 p.m. in a dark alleyway when all of a sudden someone tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around and the faceless man just relentlessly stabbed her. No words, nothing stolen, no harassments, just killed. 4 days later, around 6 a.m. when most people are asleep, a milk delivery woman, but she was delivering the milk and then someone tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around and all of a sudden this man relentlessly started to stab her. Again, no words, nothing stolen, no question, just stabbed. The heartbreaking thing is, these victims weren't stabbed just once. They were stabbed like over 10 times. The next case, a man was sleeping in his apartment and all of a sudden his dog just started barking at the door, which is so freaky because if you have dogs or cats, like they know someone is there without you actually hearing it. So he went to the door, he opened it, and he saw a woman in her 20s, actually his neighbor who was just a college student, stabbed to death. And she was just on the ground bleeding. After this, there was another case after another case, another case after another case, and police just could not figure out who this serial killer was. Another very sickening signature about this particular killer, according to the survivor, was when he would tap the shoulder to the victims near the street lights. Yes, literally where the lights were coming down upon him, he tapped the shoulder to the victims, turned them around, and then stabbed them. So this indicated that he did this on purpose. He wanted to see the victim's face in the lights. The reason was because this suspect wanted to see and feel the pain of the victims. He wanted to fully capture that moment for himself. One strange thing about this killer was that he would be very relentless. He had no mercy, but when he heard a little bit of sound, when the victims would scream, when he would hear something, when there would be car lights, or a little bit of like something that would trigger him, he would just like run away. So he had this odd two side to him, a evil, angry person, and the other side very, very shy and very scared. Now, around this time, police obviously couldn't figure out who it was, but they did capture a serial killer, and that was Yoo Young-chul. He's also one of the most famous serial criminals in Korea, and I did a video on him, so you guys should check that out. And many people thought that maybe it was him. Oh my god, we caught someone so that we don't have to fear at night anymore. But even after this criminal, Yoo Young-chul, was caught, this same pattern was happening again and again. So there was another serial killer out on the loose. Now, unfortunately, because a lot of the victims actually went to the hospital and they were very badly injured, they weren't able to really remember what the suspect looked like. I'm not sure about the West, I think the West too, but a lot of Korean polices, even till this day, they use hypnotizing. They hypnotize the victims in order to remember the past. So these victims were put into hypnosis and there was a drawing that they got out of, and this is what the victim said the suspect looked like. It's been about a year. These cases were being even more violent now. There was even one case where the victims were struck by a very hard steel object. The suspect lit the house on fire, and before he fled, he put a chopstick into the doors so the victims could not get out. During one of these crimes, actually, there was someone that was able to see the suspect flee, and they saw the face. They got a professional to draw out the montage of what the suspect could have looked like, and this was a second drawing. Oh my god, the first drawing and second drawing are literally identical. Police actually thought that these house burning cases were two different suspects from the first stabbing cases because it was so different. But of course, professional profiler Kwon knew that these could be actually the same suspect, and there was a specific reason why. When he went into the mind of the criminal, he actually knew that the suspect's crime would get more and more violent over time. This led to the criminal profiler believing that the suspect was enjoying more and more of the violent pain that he was causing to these innocent victims. It was almost as if this person was playing a game and he wasn't satisfied with level 1. He wanted to go up a level, up until he just fed all of his sick desires. It's been 2 2 years. It was April of 2006 when a mid-aged man was sleeping, again very late at night, when he heard his 20-year-old son screaming for his life. He woke up, he went to the room, and he saw that there was a man on top of his son, literally like banging him with a steel. Thank God this mid-aged man was able to tackle this suspect, and during this tackling and wrestling, the police actually was able to come fast enough and the suspect was arrested. At first, the police thought that this suspect was just a robbery gone bad. But this guy, while he was in the police car and in the investigation, he started talking to himself. While he was talking to himself, he started saying, "Darn it, I could have killed 1,000 people. Everything is over now." Apparently this was what he was whispering to himself. Police thought that he was just a crazy guy, didn't really think much of it, but as time went by and they were investigating him, they started to figure out that this man was the serial killer that they were looking for 2 years. The suspect was finally identified as Chung Nam-kyu. He was 37 years old, and he confessed to the police that he actually even quit smoking and drinking because he wanted to kill more people. He was a man who practiced running 6 miles a day in order to prepare his body for the criminal actions. When the police confiscated his weapon, it was actually a pipe wrench. And between the pipe wrenches, they found old pieces of blood, dried up blood, which meant that this was used for multiple victims, and they finally figured out that all those other cases that was used with the steel weapons was this guy, Chung Nam-kyu. In his house, he even had all the newspapers of his own murders cut out almost as a trophy. Chung Nam-kyu says that he once was actually listening to the news of the murders that he caused, and he just fell asleep peacefully while listening to his own murders. Almost like YouTube ASMR or something. So professional profiler Mr. Kwon wanted to figure out the reasons and go inside the mind of this killer. What was his reasonings? What happened? I mean, how did this start? And did he really want something from the victims, or was this for pure pleasure? Really interesting thing. In order for these professional profilers to easily talk to the suspects, they actually sympathize with them at first in order to get them to talk. For example, Chung Nam-kyu really liked gum, so he would give him gum and say, "I know you had a hard time in jail, open up to me." And then that's just kind of how he got the suspect to open up. Chung Nam-kyu actually had absolute no remorse. He had no hesitation when he was talking about his actions. When he was talking about what he did to the police and the professional profilers, they said that his face lit up when he was talking about it. When he was talking about other stuff, he was normal. The real reason why Chung Nam-kyu said he did what he did was because he was, quote, addicted to killing. He didn't want their money, he didn't know them personally, he was just waiting for them around the corner for any suspects he can get his hands on. He said he liked to watch the victims' reactions, and that's the reason why he physically turned them around and did this, especially in the post lamps or the street lights. There's a very famous video of him going into the police car once he was found, and he's smiling at the camera. He's smiling at all those paparazzis and press, and professional profilers believe that he's smiling because he's telling the public, "You're no better than me." A crazy thing is when Mr. Kwon said that he went to Chung Nam-kyu's house, he actually found a magazine of himself, and he knew that these crazy criminals are looking at him. Police, the profilers, of what they're doing, how they're catching these suspects, what kind of new technology is out there in order to catch suspects, and these crazy suspects are reading and researching all of this. This is the most psychotic part that a lot of people are shivering about. So when the profiler asked him, "What did you do when you failed at the attempts to the surviving victims?" He had about 20 victims who ended up surviving. And Chung Nam-kyu said, "When I failed at my attempts, I would go back to the place where I did succeed and just stood there. It made me feel so happy." And this guy's favorite hobby and the thing that gave him pleasure and a reason to go on in life was to take away someone else's life. I mean, how crazy is that? So we try to go back to Chung Nam-kyu's life in order to figure out what caused him, what triggered these people. I mean, did these feelings happen when they were young, and was there some kind of trauma that they faced that made them like this? So they say that since a very young age, Chung Nam-kyu was actually very, very timid. He was a shy guy, and actually he was seen as the weaker one out of the school, out of the army. army that he was in. It was said that his father would abuse him since he was very young and they had not a lot of money in the family. He also confessed for the first time that when he was around 11, 12 years old, there was a trusted neighbor, a mid-aged man, but he took Jung Nam-gyu to an isolated area one day and assaulted him. Although he didn't go into detail about this, a lot of people believe that this was the triggering start. He also was living alone in high school, and he also says that there was other male neighbors that came into his house and assaulted him. Once he was an adult, he started bouncing between jobs from delivery to factories, and he couldn't keep a straight job due to his personality. Odd thing is, actually, one of his very first victim, he says that were two young boys. He isolated them the same way he was treated when he was 11. He took them to an isolated area, assaulted them, and then murdered them. So he actually did the same thing that he hated in his life to other people now that he was an adult. The last thing that the profiler asked him was, why did you burn the houses down of the victims? Like, what made you just do this and then go into burning houses? He said that when he would burn the houses down, he felt an achievement feeling that rushed through his body. He even said that his depression was cured every time he would do this. I forgot to mention another crazy thing he said was that he was looking at the news of Yu Young-chul, the other serial killer that was caught around, I believe, 2004. Jung Nam-gyu said that when he was watching the news of Yu Young-chul getting caught, he actually said that his goal in his life was to kill more people than Yu Young-chul did. When Yu Young-chul was caught, he actually confessed to a crime that he didn't do. And that crime that he didn't do was actually done by Jung Nam-gyu. And Jung says that when he was watching the news, he got offended that someone else would take credit for his own crimes. Like, how many people do you meet and they're like, my dream is to be a #1 criminal? He even went as far as researching what food is good for you, like how we would keep in the best shape possible in order to continue doing this, continue living life as the #1 criminal. So eventually Jung Nam-gyu was sentenced in court to death, and it's been about 2 years and 7 months and he wasn't executed yet, but before his execution he actually was found dead in his own cell by self-harm. So he was his own last victim. Before he passed away, he actually told the police that he would rather be executed than live because he just cannot live without acting upon his urges. Because Jung Nam-gyu took his own life, a lot of victims' family were left speechless because now they had no one else to blame. They had no suspects to point their finger to. So the last takeaway about this message is the fact that anywhere around the world, people with this mindset does exist. This does not just exist in Korea. This happens all over the world. So how can we protect ourselves? You hear parents always say, never walk in a dark alleyway or in the corner, never walk by yourself, don't be alone. And that is true because these criminals hide in these dark alleyways and corners. Just like this suspect, he went to the gym. He practiced running every single day. He ran 6 miles every day in order to prepare for this. So was this because of his childhood traumas? Was he bored with this? What do you think is the reason why he turned out this way with these sick urges? And how can we prevent this in the future? So let me know what you guys have thought about the mind of this pleasure killer that was actually addicted to a sick urge that not a lot of people have. Remember to hit the like button if you enjoy these stories, to hit the algorithm so we have a lot of people spread awareness about these cases, and subscribe and hit the notification bell because I reply to all my early birds. I can reply to you. See you guys in my next video.